Hello everyone, this is Camera Flips, the best place to buy and sell used camera gear. Today is episode number 4 of A Photographer's Life, where we talk to the people that made the pictures we love. My guest for today is Marton Kovacs, a very talented photographer based in London. Since he was a child, Marton was fascinated by the hidden world of insects, amphibians and reptiles. In his picture, we have the opportunity to appreciate the detailed features and the colorful patterns of animals that often escape our naked eye. His work is also a powerful reminder of how the habitats of these beautiful and defenseless creatures is constantly shrinking under the pressure of climate change, deforestation and greed. We can all play a role in this fight, and in the description below you will be able to find a list of organizations that are working to revert these negative trends, and they need our support. Let's jump right into a conversation. Okay, well, we are live once again. This is episode number 4 of A Photographer's Life. And today I'm super excited. I'm very honored. We have a great guest, Marton Kovacs. Marton, thank you very much for being with me today. And I think this is a fantastic episode because so far I've covered food, I've covered events, sports, and music, and I've covered landscape. And now we're moving down to the small, to the small and the smallest, and you'll be able to take us through the wonders of that world that I think many times they go sort of underlooked, and people forget that there is an infinity of interesting things, literally sort of behind your nose, and we don't even notice. Marton, again, thank you so much for being here. For those that don't know you, tell us how you got into photography and what you're specialized in, and why you care so much about that topic, which I think it's incredibly interesting.
Sure. First of all, thank you so much, David, for thinking about me and giving me the opportunity to talk with you and speak about photography as one of my passion. So my name is Marton. I'm from Hungary. I live in London. I work in travel. So my first passion is obviously traveling, and also I'm really interested in macro photography and also in landscape photography and basically every aspect of photography, I would say. So I'm still a beginner. I'm learning a lot, and recently I tried to focus on macro photography and on my passion, which are mainly amphibians and reptiles. So the macro world.
So why? Again, it's in a second we will put some pictures on the screen to really sort of put the viewers in your shoes when you're taking the shot, and why you find it that so interesting and so amazing. But when did that interest started? Like, how was something that you had since you were a child? Was something that happened later on? Why that interest? What's a sort of sparkle that interest?
So basically, my whole passion for amphibians and reptiles started when I was a child. Me and my cousins spent a lot of time in the summer at Lake Balaton, and obviously we were just running around, playing around when we were kids, and we started collecting, frogs and small snakes for ourselves, to keep it for a couple of days and then releasing back to the wild. It's just interested us and became our passion basically at a very young age. And then obviously, as we grew up, this passion, faded away a little bit. Everyone had their own lives. I became interested I started playing football a bit, being interested in history in school. So it went to the background a bit, but now, as an adult, interestingly, the last couple of years, I just kind of discovered this passion and started being interested in them. I also realized that, I started traveling a couple of years ago. I left Europe the first time in 2015 and kind of realized that there's a whole new world out there. It's not just about beaches, not just about cities and so on. It's all about nature. And it's basically amazing to discover those areas, what I was, watching when I was a kid on Nat Geo or on VHS and so on, and see those animals, what I was really interested in.
I think that, and I share a similar experience. I mean, I watched so many documentaries. David Attenborough. Now we're both in the UK. We remember this voice probably since we were like children. And yeah, and it's incredible how you could see certain scenes taking place, the colors, the patterns, and we don't even notice that unless someone points our sort of our eyes, and in this case your lens, towards them. So maybe this is a good opportunity to see if I can show the first picture, which I think it's really beautiful. And again, sure people will. Let me see. Okay, let me see if you're able to see it on the screen.
Yes, I can.
I mean, tell us obviously what are we having on the screen? I know that if I say a frog, that's quite incorrect. But more importantly, where were you, and how did you capture this beautiful and sharp image?
So this is if I'm not mistaken, I haven't asked anyone to properly identify the frog, but I think it's a juvenile gladiator tree frog from Costa Rica. We found this little guy in near Manuel Antonio National Park on a night walk. And it's dear to my heart. I mean, this picture is dear to my heart because this was one of my first picture with my old macro lens I bought in 2018. So basically, just a little bit of background. Obviously, I've been to a couple of times in the tropics, and I always wanted to photograph amphibians and reptiles, but I couldn't really figure out, I didn't really make a research how to do that because I thought at the beginning that the zoom lens is gonna work, but obviously with very difficult lighting conditions and so on, and focusing distances and so on, I failed a couple of times, especially while I was in Bali. So after that trip, I started researching, how can I take pictures of amphibians and reptiles, and came across with the whole world of macro photography. And this was the first trip when I could, use the macro lens I bought back in 2018. Obviously, again, I didn't know too much about macro photography at that time. I didn't do too much research. So again, I haven't had a off-camera flash, which helps a lot. But I mean, on this picture, you can see the light is a bit harsh, so it's not as soft as you would want with a diffuser. And the reason is that I still use my camera's flash, on-camera flash with it without the diffuser. And then on my left hand, I was keeping a torch, just to give an extra light source to the subject while we were on a night walk. So obviously it wasn't a photography specific walk. Basically, I let everyone walk and, see the animals, what we were seeing, and I was following the group behind, and, not to take too much time of their time. I just wanted to, be at the end and be able to try to photograph these animals. So technically, this was my first shot. What I was quite happy about it, the frog posed quite nicely, and I think it's quite interesting.
I mean, I think it's beautiful, and I just try to picturing you, walking into the night. So were you part of a group, like a dedicated sort of trip and expedition to look for these opportunities to take a shot, or it was just a walk, a nightfall in the tropics, and you sort of took the chance and took the shot and maybe other shots? What was something specific and dedicated, or you're in a personal initiative in this case?
So on this trip particularly, me and my wife did a self-driving trip in Costa Rica. So I organized it by myself. As I said, I work in travel. So I put together, an itinerary, what I was interested in. I booked the hotel separately and, looked for local guides in different areas. So this was the end of the trip, or last stop before heading back to San Jose. And then this was an organized a night walk by a local company, which they did a great job. We basically entered the private reserve near Manuel Antonio National Park, and then we were walking on designated trails, and whatever we could find along the trails, We viewed them obviously, and if someone wanted to take some pictures, we had the chance to do so.
So that was sort of your. Let me stop sharing for a second. So that was your sort of first shot, first trip. What do you think you've learned, from that shot to something that we'll then put on the screen in a few more minutes? How did you progress? Because you're entirely self-taught, which I think it's incredible. Obviously, practice makes perfect, but you're self-taught in photography and in ornithology, so your ability to recognize these animals as well. What would be your advice for someone that wants to sort of capture these beautiful scenes from the small worlds, and how they should sort of accelerate the learning curve in this domain?
Sure. I mean, I am, as you said, I'm self-taught in the sense that I learned everything from YouTube. So there are many great photographers out there, and I watched countless of tutorials and so on. So I was able to learn a lot of things about them. If someone wants to do macro photography, I would say it depends on what they're interested in. So I'm mainly focusing on amphibians and then reptiles as well. But sometimes, if I found an interesting spider or so, or an insect, I'm happy to do that. Obviously, here in the UK, probably photographing insects is easier than finding frogs, because there aren't so many places, or it's not so obvious to find them here than in the tropics. So I would say, the most important things is get like at least a macro lens, secondhand to get started. Get a flash as well, an off-camera flash. You can get it quite cheap nowadays from £50. I just bought one before my recent Ecuador trip. You don't need, in my opinion, the best gear to start with, because as you said, the most important thing is to go out and try it and exercise, because that's how you're gonna fail a lot, and then from failing you will start improving. You're gonna learn what you should have done better, differently, and so on. So I think that's the most important thing.
Now that obviously we were, until recently, to an extent, we still are in lockdown. And again, you're in the UK, which unfortunately, as you said, is not great for for amphibians and other reptiles. How do you keep continuing, sort of honing your skills and getting ready for the next trip? What do you do? Is there any exercise, or maybe have you found interesting spots within the UK? Where actually similar scenes, or maybe with different subjects, can be captured?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. I mean, first of all, one of my weakness is that I'm not going out and shooting that much as I wanted. Obviously, I mean, I'm working full time, but that's kind of just an excuse. I don't always find the motivation to go out and shoot, which is negativity from my side. But again, recently I've been out shooting and tried to do some researches, where I can find amphibians, reptiles here in the UK, which I tried to do it by myself. But again, I wasn't really successful finding them. But recently I upgraded my macro lens. I bought a second-hand Nikon 105 f2.8 macro lens from a local gentleman, and it turned out that he's also a nature fan, which is amazing. So I contacted him, we chatted a bit, obviously we met at the purchase of the lens, and then we talked about, and he offered me to take me out to different parts of London and show me some wildlife. And a week ago I texted him, and then we went out, and he showed me some amazing places in southwest London, not too far from Heathrow. It's a private reserve managed by Thames Water, with some ponds, good bird life. We found some amphibians as well. We found one reptile, and so on. So it was really, really interesting. And also we went to just outside of Bushy Park to photograph some birds and whatever we could find, and found a nice grey heron. So I would say this is how it continued, or maybe I would say hopefully it's a new beginning for myself, and it gives me extra motivation and to go out and continue shooting.
I mean, I'm starting to sort of picking up a similar pattern. I'm going through these interviews, and everyone seems, everyone sort of agrees on something, that there is a great community. Like, I think the people maybe outside photography don't realize. They think that obviously it's, in many cases, it seems a very solitary exercise. It seems when you prepare for the shot, when you take the shot, when you edit it, you think as a person that for hours just walks by him or herself. And instead, there's a vibrant community of people that actively are there to help you. In this case, this person took you out, show you around. I had a similar experience with another guest that then again was sort of running out of places to shoot, landscapes, to say, okay, everything around me, I know, I've covered. And then he joined the local community, and he was able to discover new areas, and he was surprised by how people were actively reaching out and offering great advice with nothing in return. Is there a sort of a local, or do you think you or maybe you can build one? I don't know. Is there a local community in London for macro photographer interested in wildlife?
I haven't looked it up yet, but I'm pretty sure. I mean, London is so huge. There are, I don't know, 9-10 million people living here. I'm pretty sure there are some communities, and that can be the next step. Because it's always good to meet some people and learn from others. Wherever I go, I try to be open-minded and talk to people. What settings they use, how they approach this and that, and so on. So I think it's we can definitely learn way more from others, and then implement the things we learned and use it with those skills.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, maybe you can look it up, and if it's not, it could be a nice, a nice way you can be the engine
Exactly.
of something new. I think one thing that when talking to you before this interview, and again, it's interesting how we met. Again, how you saw something to me, and I think it's great. Again, it's part of the general idea of that community, and then we started talking, and I actually looked at your Instagram. I was like, oh, I was blown away. This is so beautiful. Like, and so, to an extent unusual, think of Instagram as a vehicle for different types of pictures, and I was really captivated by them. And what always sort of resonated with me is, I think, and I think it's probably the same with you, it's the fact that spending time outside, especially in the tropics, and you realize that that these species are in danger, right? That environment is shrinking. That habitat is constantly under attack, and it's a shame. It's I would say mostly man-made. That means that the solution could also be man-made, and I think that it's something that it's worth talking about, because spending that much time and seeing this, and I would like to put another one on the screen, which again, I think it's absolutely fantastic for what I'm about to show. What kind of shots you'll be able to capture. I think it's absolutely great. Let me see. You're able to see this one?
Yes, it's in front.
Yes, I mean, look at the drop of water on the on the head. Wow, that is incredible. But I think that it must be, probably not even on the back, but on the front of your mind. You're taking a shot, and then you move on, and you walk between shots, and you think that could be, no, that could be a species that if I come back next year, I will not be able to capture again, because deforestation, climate change, all of it. What's on your mind when you're looking at this, and you think that that could have been the last opportunity of seeing this beautiful animal in its natural environment?
I mean, it's a big global issue, in my opinion. I started being more aware of what's happening in the world. As we discussed, I started traveling and understanding, opening my eyes and my mind to see what's happening. I mean, currently there's a huge mass extinction, worldwide, within the animal world. This is known, and we're not just talking about amphibians and reptiles, but mammals as well, and we are humans. One of the biggest issues, or the reasons why these animals are declining. And especially in my case, who just started being really interested in the world of herpetology again, and was able to visit the tropics a couple of times, talking to researchers, talking to photographers, talking to locals. You really understand that there's a big issue happening right now, all around the globe. Right now, I can talk about the current situation of Ecuador, because that's where I've been to. And that was my first herpetology related or photography related trip I did recently, or so far. And then, as you mentioned, there's a huge problem, but not just there. It's you can say it all around Central and South America, in Southeast Asia as well, and then Africa, of course, there as well. My main point of this trip was, to understanding, what an impact can be do with travel in these remote locations. And see, obviously observing the beloved creatures, different lizards, snakes, and then frogs and salamanders in their natural habitat. So all these pictures, what I took in Ecuador, they were all living in their natural habitat. We didn't visit any zoos and so on. And this was the case with this Gemino as well in the picture. It's a beautiful, colorful male. These lizards are usually active during the day, so they are diurnal species. But it's much easier to photograph them at night, because as you can see, they're just chilling on these branches. Mm-hmm. And we woke them up by approaching them, and luckily they don't move too much in the dark. And we could snap a couple of pictures of them. It's very, very important to see these animals and try to share them. And I don't consider myself a real photographer. I'm more in the amateur category, or hobbyist. But I think it's really important what many big and good photographers are already doing to share these images, try to educate the crowd and spread the word, how threatened some areas in our world are, and try to protect these places. And by protecting these places, protecting the animals, not just reptiles and amphibians. There are different mammals, different birds as well living in these areas. So everyone would benefit from doing that.
So where were you exactly? You said you were in Ecuador. Were you in a specific part of Ecuador in here?
Exactly. So basically I spent 2 weeks in Ecuador, 14 nights, and the first 6-7 nights was with a company called Tropical Herping. These guys are researchers and biologists. They're doing an extremely good job in Ecuador. Basically they are rediscovering species which they thought they were already extinct. They're also, supporting different nature reserves by funding, money to buy different acres of some acres of rainforest and so on. And what these guys do is they organize photography holidays or herpetology related holidays, and by doing that they fund their research, and also they also protect these reserves where we've been to. So on this particular trip, I started with one night in Quito, where I was by myself. I did some city shots and so on, which I also really like. After that, we spent the night in Mindo. This is a well-known cloud forest, approximately an hour and a half or 2 hours away from Ecuador. We stayed in a remote lodge around 1,800 meters above sea level, and we were able to do a big night walk. So basically, what you need to know is, most of the reptiles and amphibians are active during night. So we are concentrating, after dinner from 7 p.m., 8 p.m. till, midnight, 1 a.m., just going out to the forest on designated trails and just looking around, and try to find different animals and photograph them. So that's the main purpose. And then after spending a night in Mindo, we went and continued towards the Choco rainforest, which was my dream, which came through. And basically that's where we spent another 4 or 5 nights and discovering the declining rainforest there, which is a low rainforest. What you need to know about this is it's on the Pacific side of Ecuador, Colombia, and the south part of Panama. And in Ecuador, they say there is only 2% of the Choco remaining, which is one of the most threatened rainforest in the world. And I feel that, you know, promoting and showing people what this forest has hopefully will create some attention and help with the conservation purposes and so on.
I think what you just mentioned is just a different kind of holiday, a fantastic trip, because you are there with people that obviously know the area. They're able to find those amazing animals for you to take great shots. But that's just to an extent a pretext, or just the reason, one of the many reasons what they do. That there's the biologists, the scientists, they fund the research, and then they actively use some of the funds to buy acres of land of this beautiful forest, so that again cannot be used for a different purpose, for their palm oil plantation or just for other reason. I think is absolutely great, and I'll be definitely put that into discussion. What was the name again of the company that you used?
So they called Tropical Herping. These are the guys who are biologists, researchers, and amazing photographers. And also they are working closely with the Fundación Jocotoco, who are an Ecuador-based non-profit company. They're protecting a lot of reserves all around Ecuador. And basically everyone is connected through them. And then obviously with the Save the Choco project is also very important. So all these companies are trying to protect the Canande and Tesorillo reserves of the Choco.
Yeah, I guess this is so important. Through the beauty of these pictures, it's important to raise awareness that that was an opportunity, that was your dream, is probably somebody else's dream, and now that we see that, we can feel connected to an area of the world that it's remote but contains an incredible biodiversity, and yeah, it's under attack. So it's a good call to action. One of the things that I personally found very interesting about what you do is that again, it's not common specializing in macro photography, and definitely not common in specializing and really looking for amphibians or reptiles, right? And that, but I think it's a great way not only to raise awareness about how endangered they are, but also to challenge some of the stereotypes that some of these animals have, I guess, even since biblical time. I would say that's a good segue from what I'm about to show. Obviously, you encounter frogs, some small lizards, but not only that. I would say, and let me put this one on the screen. So what do we have here? I mean, I guess this is dangerous. This is not a nice encounter if you don't know what you're doing, and if you again, just walking by yourself without expert advice and personnel. What do we have on the screen here?
So on this picture, you can see a fer-de-lance, or terciopelo, or how they call it in Ecuador, the equus. This is a pit viper, really common in Central and South America. Unfortunately, this is the viper which is responsible for most of the bites in the region. So it's quite feared animal. But again, with the stereotypes, as you said, most of the people develop the fear, for snakes, and same category as sharks, I would say, in the oceans. But again, I would encourage everyone, whoever goes to the tropics, to go with local guides, because they know, the area in and out. So it's definitely safer. Again, these snakes, I mean, any snakes, and none of the snakes are aggressive, so they're not gonna come up to you and bite you. It's not gonna happen. But obviously they can be defensive. So obviously, if it's a venomous snake, if you step on it, if it's not gonna flee, it might give you a nasty bite. So that's why it's important, in my opinion, to know, you know where you go, and if you don't know, then obviously go with the locals, professionals who can show you around, and so on. And this is the situation with the snake as well. The funny situation is that we found this. I mean, all guides found this under a big dry leaf, like a meter away from our trail inside the forest. And this snake was sleeping, so obviously they don't have an eyelid, but their tongue wasn't moving. So we thought it was sleeping, but everyone went really quiet. Don't wake him up, because it's quite a nervous snake, I would say. But we were just laying down on our belly on the forest floor, and being like around 2 meters away from the snake. It didn't move. We respected. We didn't start playing around with it. We respected the animal. We didn't want to do anything with it, just to take a photograph and then move on. So again, I think many of these species are misunderstood. They don't want anything with you. They just, they live in a wide range of habitat, especially the terciopellos, on farmlands as well, because they are just there to hunt. They're looking for rodents, lizards, frogs to eat. And obviously, if your area is infested by rodents and lizards, then there's a good chance, that you will encounter some snakes.
But that is sort of on. You learn through photography, and not just through your personal interest, that again, even certain animals that we believe are just a problem, and obviously we learn to respect them, but also we learn how important they are for their habitat and to maintain that equilibrium, right? And so again, I think I can see how many, not only, and pardon, the joke, on a macro level, how climate change and how deforestation is impacting these areas, but also how certain animals that we believe are just there to threaten us, they instead play a vital role in their environment. Is there any other? I'm curious, and it can go beyond, obviously, snakes or specific animals. Through your travel and through your sort of trips and expedition to find those animals, is there any other stereotypes that you had, or any other sort of assumption that you had about areas, people, things? How, did you change in some way, and photography helped you in that respect?
I mean, I would say it opens up everyone's mind, if you are willing to accept what's happening. Stereotypically, I would say the biggest thing changed are with snakes. So I'm not that super confident with them, so I'm definitely not going to touch them, play around with them, and so on. I leave that with the guides and the professionals if it needs to be done. But again, I was in Bali in 2016, and that was my first night walk with a local company called Bali Reptile Rescue. Again, they are a non-profit organization. They teach farmers not to kill snakes, rather call them and relocate them. And we found a couple of snakes who were very defensive. They weren't venomous, but again, they told me, oh yeah, just grab it, if you want to hold it. And I held it, and they just started to wiggle like crazy. But then again, you put them down on the ground, you put their head down on the ground, and they calm down, and you see that what they want to do is just get away from you. They don't want to do anything with you, and biting is probably the last thing they want to do by wasting their venom, or even if they're not venomous, that's the last thing they want to do. They prefer to flee away from you. So I think that's the most important thing I learned, that these animals are calm. You have to be calm around them, and again, don't play with them. because there's no point. There's no point to stressing any animals just to even to take a picture, because there's no point, harming them in their environment.
I'm curious about another thing. When you say to people that you're interested in that, and then this is what that your ideal holiday is to look for these creatures at nighttime. What's other people's reaction? And is your wife you said that she was with you the first time? Is she exactly as interested as you are, or she would prefer something else?
No, good question. I mean, that's a bit of a difficulty for us, because as I said, I mean, I recently became really interested in these kind of holidays, and it makes it a little bit limited to me, because obviously my wife is freaking out everything which is smaller than a cat. So yeah, it's a bit difficult. So in Ecuador, I went by myself, but in Costa Rica, obviously, with the scenery and staying in different lodges, which wasn't this. I mean, I would say extreme. I wouldn't call this extreme, but this one was really in the middle of nowhere. Not surrounded by any cities. We had to cross a river to get to the reserve. And there was a ferry, so there's no bridge. So it's a very remote area where we've been to in the Choco. So it's very, very different. And I kind of got addicted to these kind of, let's say, adventures, whatever is, a bit more luxurious. Like after the Choco, I went to visit the Amazon, stayed in an amazing lodge in the Ecuadorian Amazon by myself. I mean, organized by the lodge, spot on food, spot on accommodation. But again, something I felt like it was a bit touristy for me, after visiting such a remote area. And then now I'm just got caught in these kind of holidays. I mean, I haven't planned anything yet, but I'm really looking forward to be able to get out and do something similar, to visit a lesser known area and see what it holds for us.
So let's fast forward like 3 years from now. Then hopefully the COVID-19 epidemic is under control, and let's imagine that you have unlimited budget, right? You won the lottery, and you can organize the trip of your dream. Where would you go, and why would you go there?
I mean, if I had unlimited budget, probably I wouldn't stop traveling. So I would just set off and see you later. But other than that, I mean, I have a lot of like dream destinations. As I said, I'm really interested in Central and South America. So I would start with probably Colombia, Peru. Again, Brazil is amazing. I mean, there are so many great places there. But again, you could visit Chile and Argentina, a bit different landscape, but again, really interesting flora and fauna. Then in Central America, I'm really interested in Guatemala. From Africa, I mean, there are tons of countries. I've never been to Africa in my life, so anything would be new. But I would, as a first trip, I would probably choose Madagascar. Because of the diversity of reptiles, amphibians, and mammals as well. They're so unique, such a unique environment. I would love to go to Madagascar. And then in Asia, I'm really looking forward to go to Borneo soon, either to the Indonesian or the Malaysian part, because it's another rainforest which has been deforested, and a lot of palm oil plantation have been set up in the last couple of years, and then it's worrying what's happening there. But their diversity and flora and fauna is just amazing, out of this world. So very interested in these places particularly.
Nice. Well, I mean, I'm sure let's hope that in a few years, that we're back to what it used to be, and you're able to go there. Is there any other photographers that that you're inspired by, or you are particularly captivated by the picture they're taking in the macro photography world?
I mean, there are a lot of talented photographers, like professionals. Like, I can't even compare myself to them, but they are a good inspiration, and I see the level they are, and it's a good goal to be as close as where they are. So I'm following a lot of great photographers. I can start with the guys from Tropical Herping. They're extremely extremely talented, Jose Vieira, Alejandro Arteaga, Lucas Bustamante. These guys are professionals, great guys and extremely talented. And also from here, Europe, Mathieu Bernot. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing his name correctly. He's a French herpetologist and macro photographer, so he's really good. And then in a wider spectrum, in wildlife and a bit of combination of everything, Chien Li is really good. There's a lot of photographs from Borneo and from the tropics as well, from South and Central America. And the big names like Paul Nicklin, big conservationist. It's more like fine art what he does, but it's absolutely amazing what he do about wildlife. But it's more like the marine and bears and wolves and so on, so Arctic regions and so on.
Nice. But that's some great suggestion. I will definitely check it out, and I'm sure the people that will watch the video, that I think it's fantastic, and it really sort of it took me back to when I was younger, and again growing up in Italy and looking at this like amazing documentary and being just stunned by the diversity, the patterns. There's certain colors and things that you couldn't even imagine. Like, you need to see it on an animal and see Mother Nature and evolution developing those either to camouflage or to sort of scare away potential predators or to represent a different reality. I think it's absolutely incredible. Let's talk about gears now. Obviously you have progressed and evolved as a photographer, and certainly probably using a slightly different combination of cameras, lenses, and maybe other external things. What are you using now? Why? And what would you sort of buy to get even better results in your photography?
Sure. I mean, as I mentioned, I kind of started with landscape and travel photography. So I have a couple of basic DX lenses and so on. So I shoot with a Nikon D7200. I upgraded that 2 years ago from a Nikon D3200. So it's a DX camera. And then my main lenses are I have a 16-85 DX lens. That's just for travel photography, architecture, city, and so on. And then for wildlife, I use a quite basic, but it's a good starting, a 70-300 Nikon lens. Which can deliver quite sharp results, if the animals are not too far from you. So it's surprisingly, compared to the cheap price, it delivers good results. And then my main lens, which I bought, I think a couple of weeks ago, is a Nikon 105 f2.8 macro lens, which I just upgraded from a Sigma 105 macro lens. The main difference is basically this one has VR, the other one didn't have image stabilization. And again, I felt it sometimes, if I have to go down on my knees and so on, and or my belly, and I cannot hold the camera as sturdy as I want. Camera shake and so on, or handshake, it caused some image blur. This hopefully will give me an extra level and give me motivation to go out. So these are my main lenses. I have a couple of others. I have a 35mm 1.8 DX lens, which I rarely use. I bought it, to try and get into a bit of portraits and so on, just to try it out. And also have an FX lens, which is a 24-120. I bought that as well, for later on if I change to FX cameras. But again, I don't use that much, so it's kind of just sitting there. Other than this, I just bought a cheap off-camera flash for the macro photography. I would need a transmitter for that as well, so that was another mistake which I didn't know. Off camera, having the flash off camera is better than if it's on the top of your camera. Again, you learn on the way. And then my personal goal is to max out this camera, so I'm not in a rush to buy something new. I try to, I always have this in the back of mind. Oh, let's buy something new camera. There's so many good ones out there. And then, I just came to a realization that, hey, why would you need something new if you maybe I haven't used my full potential, or the full potential of this lens and these lens and the camera. So I try to focus on my current gear. Other than that, in the near future, I would add on at least 2 lenses to my collection, which would be, one is a really interesting one, is a 50mm Laowa f4 macro lens. So it's a wide angle macro lens, which basically would enable me to take pictures of the amphibians and reptiles in their natural habitat. So basically you focus on the animal, and then on the top of that you can show the habitat where they live, and it can create very interesting pictures. So that's what I'm really interested in. It's a very interesting lens, probably quite difficult to use, but I'm planning to get one in the future. And then I would love to have a bigger zoom range as well. So I was looking at the Nikon 200 to 500 f5.6 zoom lens. I think it's a good price quality lens as well. So that's what's on my list as well. And then the rest, there's so many good ones, with f2.8 aperture and so on. So yeah, I mean, there's so many options to choose from. Later on, I would say I'll be interested in those as well.
Well, it seems that you have a pretty clear idea, and I absolutely sort of second your comment. I think that changing always brand new, unless again the technology is leaped to a point that obviously makes other things obsolete. But it's incredible how camera gear in general, if well kept and maintained, really holds its value and can deliver phenomenal results. Over time, especially with lenses, I would say it's amazing if the glass is clear. You can have older lenses that are just as sharp as new ones. Then of course you introduce VR, image stabilization, all sorts of different motors that are, especially I would expect sometimes. I mean, I assume most of the time you are in autofocus for many reasons, especially because some motors can be a little bit noisy and you may scare
That's right.
some of the animals away. But then of course it's getting to the point that are great. It's great technology, great autofocus, super silent. But no, I absolutely agree with you, Martin. This was incredible, and I feel we could go on for a long time. I really look forward to your next travel because I'm sure you will be able to deliver incredible shots. Where can people find you, for advice, to talk about your pictures, maybe to organize a trip, nearby, and discover hidden areas of London and find new wildlife to photograph?
Probably the easiest way is on Instagram. I'm on Instagram with the username martonk89. People can DM me, if they need any advice. Obviously, I don't have the license to organize these kind of holidays at the moment. Hopefully in the future, I'm planning to do something like this, but it's just a dream at the moment. But happy to give advice to people, if they want to get around. I have a good knowledge in all around the world, I would say. And I have some connections as well. So if someone is interested in these kind of holidays, I can definitely point them into the right direction.
Brilliant. Well, as I said, I really enjoyed it. I go back to your Instagram because you have some amazing shots. There's one shot that we've not been able to show, but there's one shot that you took in your house of a house spider. Yeah. That was phenomenal, and I think it's so absolutely look it, because you can find incredible opportunities close to your window. You don't have to go necessarily to Ecuador if you know what you're doing. And how long did it take to take that shot? I guess the spider wasn't really complying with your with your design.
So that was in the beginning of the lockdown. So obviously, I think it was a Saturday or Sunday because I wasn't working, and I just opened the window to let some air in. and I saw something tiny, black spot, just jumping around, and I was like, oh wow, that might be a jumping spider. And I always wanted to photograph a jumping spider, but it was such a small spider. I think it was like 2 or 3 millimeter, that I couldn't really see the patterns. I couldn't see the eyes, and I was like, okay, I mean, not harming it. I tried to put it on a small piece of paper. I get my gear, and I was sitting down here for like 10, 15 minutes, trying to nail a shot. And it was extremely difficult because the spider was so small. I didn't really see, what I'm shooting. And then on the other hand, it was just jumping and running around, and tried to make it stop for a couple of seconds. And man, it was a hard job. I was like literally sweating here, but sitting here for 15 minutes, and I think I shoot around 15, 20 pictures, and 2 turned out to be okay. Again, I think a higher magnification would have been better, but I didn't have. But you work with what you have, and with the result, I was quite happy at the end.
Good. Well, maybe I'll be able to put it on in the video as well. I found it very, very, very interesting. Martin, again, thank you so much for your time today and for all your insights. And yeah, I hope to have you on the show again soon.
Thank you, Davide. I appreciate your time and opportunity. Really appreciate it.